They told everyone I failed. At every holiday dinner, every family gathering, I was the cautionary tale, the one who threw away his future. But that night, at my Uncle Stephen Mallory's engagement dinner, I just sat there quietly listening to their laughter, until his fiancée turned, looked straight at me, and whispered, "Wait, you're—" The whole room froze. Even my mother Margaret couldn't speak. For a moment, I wasn't the failure anymore. I was the secret they all pretended didn't exist. Before I share my story, I want to know you are here with me. Just say "listening" in the comments, or tell me where you're watching from. I love hearing how far my story reach. Sometimes even the smallest connection can make a story feel heard. Thank you. And now here's my story. My name is Ethan Cole, and for years my own family introduced me as their biggest disappointment. What they didn't know was that the very company they praised at that dinner, the one that saved lives across hospitals, was mine. If you've ever been underestimated, forgotten, or pushed aside by your own family, hit subscribe. You'll find yourself in my story because sometimes the ones they laugh at end up rewriting the entire script. They told everyone I failed. And some nights I believed them right up until the moment my uncle's fiancée, Lauren Hayes, looked at me and whispered, "Wait, you're—" and the room went still. That freeze frame has a way of rewinding you to where the bruise started. So I'll start where mine did. I flew into Charleston for a short visit and stepped back into the Coleman House by the river, that white columned monument to manners where the hallways shine like a mirror and the air always smells like jasmine and mint. If a house can judge you, ours does it softly with polished floors and framed proof. The wall of honor runs the length of the main hall. A gallery of Olivia's magazine features her college awards, the gala photos where my mother Margaret stands tall in emerald silk. Somewhere near the baseboard there's still a second-grade soccer picture of me with grass in my hair, but everything after that is Olivia. I stood there and let the frames look past me. I thought, the wall can keep the story it likes. I'll keep the life I'm building. At dinner, the crystal chimed the way it always does, and the knives flashed in the chandelier's light, and the topic, as if engraved on the silver, was achievement. Stability, reputation. My mother Margaret asked if I'd thought about a real clinical pathway again. Her smile gentle and precise like a suture. My father Richard said, "A name like Harvard opens more doors than any hustle ever will." I cut my steak in quiet squares and let their words land. When you're the family cautionary tale, you learn to breathe through a conversation. I could have told them I left Harvard Medical on a night I still dream about, the lab, hushed monitors, humming my screen full of toy patients built from data points, neural nets, learning to recognize what a busy human could miss. I saw for the first time that the work I wanted wasn't a white coat. It was a system that made white coats safer. I could have told them that, but experience teaches you which truths bounce and which ones bruise. I gave them the version that keeps the evening calm. I said I work for a healthcare platform in Colorado. I didn't say NeuroBridge. I didn't say Solunet. Around the table I felt the little looks, the soft sympathy of cousins, the neutral nod from an uncle who thinks startups are hobbies that last a season. My mother Margaret lit a candle later in the den under the shelf of Olivia's awards like she does every year near her birthday month. And I watched the flame tremble under the certificates and thought about how rituals can bless and blind at the same time. Back upstairs, the study looked exactly like it did when I left home, all dark wood and order. On my father Richard's desk sat a thick envelope sealed in blue wax, the stamp deep and old-fashioned. Stephen Mallory, San Francisco. My mother Margaret keeps a china cabinet in the next room. Tucked into the corner is a small tin box she never talks about. I opened it gently, the way you open a hymn book. And there they were, a neat stack of birthday postcards in my handwriting, the ones I've sent for years when I couldn't figure out how to come home without being wrong. No return address, no flourish, just a line or two, and the same signature. DC. She'd kept them all unasked and unmentioned. That night I lay in the guest room where the ceiling fan clicks like a metronome and let the old ache and the new life try to shake hands. My value can't be pegged to a crest on a letterhead, I told myself. My worth can't ride on whether the wall hangs my face. Anonymity wasn't a stunt. It was armor, a way to let the thing I was building speak before I ever did. Later, when the house slept, I went back to the study and set my hand on the blue wax seal. Stephen Mallory's engagement dinner. I pictured the room, the toasts, the polished strangers. If I show up, I'm still the nephew who hasn't landed anything real, unless somebody in that room can read 3 letters for what they are. I slid the envelope into my bag and told the dark-paneled room, half promise, half dare, it'll go. Denver was where the word failure lost its echo and turned into a blueprint. My first place was a converted loft in the old Rhino District warehouse's concrete floors that held the day's heat, a window that faced a loading dock in the sun. I worked 18-hour stretches that smelled like cold brew and solder dinner balanced on a server crate because my desk was already buried in notes. In daylight, I wrote code for a mid-size health tech company small enough that the problems were specific, big enough that the stakes were real. That's where Dr. Aaron Miles found me in a meeting about discharge summaries that never matched the med lists patients actually lived on. "You don't just tighten a function," he said afterwards, tapping the whiteboard where I'd sketched arrows across departments. "You remake the flow between people." The industry problem felt obvious once you stared at it long enough. Records scattered across platforms that didn't talk drug interactions hiding where 2 systems overlapped and no one had time to reconcile labs redone because data was locked behind a vendor's paywall. We didn't need prettier portals. We needed a layer in the middle that listened. I started sketching something I called SolUnit Core, a neural data mesh that sat between electronic medical record systems and did the boring holy work, strip identifiers, standardize fields, enforce invariants, check for consistency like a hawk, send back a clean, unified picture to whatever chart the clinician already lived in. The first version broke in the predictable, humbling ways. Cross-system syncs surfaced invariant leaks a human could forgive, but a machine refused to pass dates off by a day across time zones, drug names with a stray space. Then traffic spiked during a test, and my message queue clogged so hard the whole mesh gasped. I wrote 3 words at the top of the whiteboard and boxed them in thick marker until the fumes made my eyes water. Treat data like patients do no harm. We kept going. Patch factor try again. A small hospital outside Phoenix agreed to trial version 0.9 on a limited pharmacy use case. 3 weeks later, their safety officer sent a spreadsheet that made my hands shake. A 60% drop in medication compatibility errors on the units using SolUnit, most of them the slippery kind that hide in the seams. They ran a case review. A nurse had almost administered a med that would have collided badly with something the patient's primary had prescribed at a second clinic. SolUnit fused the feeds and threw a flag the human could see before it mattered. The note ended with no exclamation points, just the weight of relief. This is working. By then the decision felt less like a leap and more like the next sentence. Aaron and I filed the papers for NeuroBridge, and I kept the same initials on the dotted lines I'd used on my mother's postcards, DC. We brought on a seasoned COO who loved vendor dinners and boardrooms and made a better public face than I ever would. I stayed in the engine room where the thing we promised had to actually live. Anonymity wasn't about mystery. It was a firewall. If I failed loudly, my family would be confirmed right for reasons that had nothing to do with the work. If I succeeded, I wanted the system to stand on its own legs before my name tried to lean on it. The mesh kept learning. We hardened our invariant checks, rewrote the queuing service-built reconciliation tools that behaved like a good resident on a bad night, fast, careful, willing to wake somebody if a choice could harm. Then the call none of us were ready for came from a downtown ER. A patient rolled in, crashing allergic history buried in a satellite clinic system intake, mid-chaos. Solinet pulled 2 feeds into one chart in time to stop an anaphylaxis from becoming a eulogy. 2 days later, a fund out of Seattle asked for a meeting Series A $5.5 million contingent on us not losing the soul in the scaling. The hospital sent a letter that I printed and pinned to the wall above the whiteboard. Saving one life is enough. Everything else is grace. That night, the city rained as if the heat needed forgiving. I ducked into a 24-hour diner because the neon said open 24/7, and I needed a light I didn't have to plug in. The waitress called me honey and left a mug by my elbow that never reached half empty. I wrote an email to the Phoenix ICU team from the account. No one knew the same one I used for our smallest vendors when the invoices hit my chest harder than the budget. Thank you for trusting a tool you couldn't see yet. What you did saved a stranger. Keep telling us where it hurts. I signed it the way I always do when I mean it and can't say it out loud. DC. I opened a new message to my mother, Margaret, and typed almost the same words, then watched the cursor blink until the screen felt like a mirror and deleted it. We moved into a bigger space near Southport District and kept the garage in East Denver anyway because origin stories deserve an address. The team grew the patents, stacked the code base, matured into something I could sleep near without flinching. On a Tuesday that felt like any other. Aaron leaned back in his chair and said, "There's coming a day you won't be allowed to be a pair of initials." I told him when the data is clean enough to reflect the person who built it, he'll step forward. Until then, I'd rather be a good ghost. My phone buzzed on the workbench, cutting through the hum of fans and the ghost of thunder. "Stephen, looking forward to seeing you in San Francisco." I read it twice. Felt the old Coleman house in Charleston press its hand against my ribs and thought of the blue wax seal. Fine, uncle. He'll come sit at your table. And if someone in that room can read 3 letters without flinching, maybe I won't have to speak first. 18 months turned a rented garage and 6 caffeine-wired engineers into 38 people and a wall full of Post-its that looked more like constellations than a roadmap. Neurabridge moved out of East Denver and into a real office near Southport District, Seattle, then quietly opened a satellite in Portland. Seattle built a product team focused on predictive analytics. Our Series B brought in 35 million, series closed at 80 million. The valuation hit 480 million, 14 patents filed, 260 hospitals across the U.S., 22 in Canada, 14 in Europe, and still the world didn't know my name. Inside the company, they just called me the architect. I kept my routine almost monk-like. I wrote code in the mornings, reviewed integration tickets in the afternoons, and answered investor summaries at night under my initials DC, the signature that had become legend and disguise. People speculated that DC was a consortium of founders, a ghost team from MIT or some retired genius who only appeared in code commits. I said nothing. The mystery served the mission. Once a year, I sent my mother Margaret flowers through a Denver florist that never asked for a sender's name. Each bouquet carried a small white card with the same neat initials. She never mentioned them, but I knew she kept them. Aunt Caroline once let it slip during a call. Margaret has a box for those. I pictured the small tin box in her china cabinet, the one she never let anyone touch. Meanwhile, Olivia exploded online with lifestyle videos filmed from her loft in Savannah. Perfect lighting, perfect laugh, the perfect brother who left Harvard to figure himself out. Her audience adored the story. She never said my name, only hinted at me like a lesson about ambition and failure. I didn't respond. The internet needed heroes and cautionary tales. I was comfortable being the silence between them. Then an internal email leaked. One of our marketing interns forwarded a team memo that mentioned almost casually DC will be in San Francisco for a private family event. Within hours, the note hit a health tech blog that specialized in speculation. Is Neurabridge's phantom founder attending a San Francisco gala? The post went viral. Reporters started emailing our press inbox. My COO, pragmatic as ever, called me that night. We can't confirm or deny. Just skip the trip. Aaron disagreed. Ethan, he said, voice steady as code review. You built this whole thing on the principle that data should speak for itself. But at some point, people will start writing your story for you. I stared at the plane ticket on my desk. San Francisco felt like another planet full of people fluent in reputation. But family was family, even when the word felt like a closed circuit. I booked a room at the Fairmont Hotel downtown. The suit I packed was navy plain precise. The watch had no logo. My calendar showed one personal event, Stephen Mallory's engagement dinner, and one business backup breakfast with the CIO of Pacific Regional Hospital the next morning. If dinner went wrong, I could still turn the trip into work. The night before the flight, I scrolled through Olivia's latest post, her in a champagne dress captioned, "Celebrate every win, no matter how small." I almost commented something simple. Proud of you, but left it unsent. My phone buzzed instead, a notification from an unfamiliar group chat. Lauren Hayes added you to Stephen and Lauren's engagement dinner seating plan. I opened it. My name sat on the right column directly across from hers. I smiled, half amused, half uneasy. On the plane to San Francisco, I kept thinking of Aaron's words. Maybe this was the moment when the data stopped being numbers and became a mirror. I'd just have to decide if I was ready to look. That night before sleeping, I told myself quietly, to them, I'm still the nephew who never found a real job. Unless someone in that room reads 3 letters and understands what they mean. The screen went dark, and for the first time in years, I didn't dread the landing. The Astoria Grand Hotel glowed gold from the inside out. A pianist played slow jazz near the lobby bar, notes curling through the air like smoke. The invitation said formal, and everyone took it seriously. Candles glimmered down the length of a silver-lined table where name cards gleamed in black ink. S and L embossed at the top of the menu looked like a brand, not a wedding. I arrived last as usual. It's easier to enter a story when it's already in motion. My reflection caught in the glass wall by the entrance a stranger in a dark suit who looked calm enough to pass for ordinary. Ethan, my mother said when she spotted me, her tone warm but careful. The kind of greeting that leaves no trace. How's work in Colorado? Good, I said, and that was that. My father's nod was curt professional. Around us, Olivia laughed too loud at something a cousin said about followers and brand deals. I took my seat at the far end, the polite shadow at the family table. Stephen stood up mid-course, raised his glass, and launched into a practiced speech about gratitude, love, and the future. The room sparkled with approval. Then he introduced his fiancée, Lauren Hayes, who carried herself with the ease of someone used to leading a meeting, not just attending one. When she reached my side of the table, she smiled and extended her hand. I've heard a lot about you, she said. All bad, I hope, I answered, and the corners of her mouth tilted upward. I work in healthcare tech too, she said. Implementation for a system that's changing everything. Oh, I asked, pretending not to know where this was going. It's called Neurabridge, she continued, eyes bright. Our main product, Solunet, has been revolutionary for hospital integration. Last month, we had a case where it combined records from 2 different facilities in under 40 seconds and caught a medication conflict before it hit the patient. It's incredible. For a second, I just listened. The buzz of conversation blurred into background static. She was talking about my code, my sleepless nights, my small team eating ramen over error logs. That sounds impressive, I managed. She nodded enthusiastically. The founder. No one really knows who they are, but everyone calls them DC. Whoever they are, they built something extraordinary. I felt my hand twitch toward the glass in front of me. My fingertip left a faint oval of condensation on the crystal, a fingerprint under candlelight. Across the table, Olivia scrolled through her phone. "Oh my God," she said, suddenly loud enough for half the room. "People are saying DC might be in San Francisco tonight." The laughter that followed was the kind that fills silences rather than joy. "Probably just PR," someone added. Lauren glanced down at the seating card in front of me, then back up. I saw it happen, the mental click, the recalibration. Her expression shifted from curiosity to shock to quiet realization. "Wait," she whispered, leaning slightly closer. "Ethan Cole, DC." The clinking stopped. Forks froze midair. My mother Margaret's hand halfway to her glass went still. Even the jazz from the lobby seemed to pause in the doorway. I didn't move. Then I nodded once. "Yes," I said quietly. "That's me." For a breath, nothing existed but the sound of everyone trying not to breathe too loudly. Stephen dropped his glass. My father Richard's posture snapped from social to strategic, the same stance he used in a courtroom when the opposing counsel surprised him. Lauren stared half awe, half apology. "You built Nura Bridge." "I did," I said quietly. "Though I've had help." The table erupted not in applause, but in the rustle of disbelief. Olivia's phone slipped from her hand. My father's voice cut through it, cool and exact. "So you've been running a $480 million company and never thought to mention it." "I didn't think it would come up between salad and champagne," I said. And it wasn't a joke. Across from me, Lauren's eyes softened. "You're the reason I even have my job," she said. "The work you've done, it saves lives every day." The chandelier light fractured across the table like data scattering and recombining. I looked at my family, their faces flickering between pride shock and a fear they couldn't name, and realized the irony. After years of building systems to make disconnected information speak the same language, I had finally built one for us, too. In the stunned quiet that followed, I found myself almost smiling. For once, they saw me not as the dropout or the disappointment, but as the man who made the machines listen. Stephen bent to pick up his broken glass. My father reached for his napkin as though there was still a way to restore order. My mother Margaret just stared at me, lips parted, the only person at that table without words. And I thought maybe for the first time in our family's history, the data had finally synced. The system was live. The morning after the dinner felt like walking through the aftershock of an earthquake you didn't mean to cause. The Astoria Grand's private lounge had become a staging area for damage control soft chairs and coffee that no one touched. My family filed through one by one like witnesses after a trial. My mother Margaret came first. Her heels clicked across the marble, sharp, measured familiar. She didn't sit right away. "Why did you keep it from us, Ethan?" Her voice wasn't angry, just tired in a way that cut deeper than anger. I took a breath. "Because I wanted to be asked as a person." I said, "Not as an evaluation." She folded her arms, lips pressed tight, then exhaled slowly. "I've kept a box," she said quietly, eyes shifting away. "The card signed DC. You kept sending them every year." I looked at her hands, the same ones that used to tie my shoes before piano recitals. "You never asked who sent them." "I didn't need to," she said. Part of me knew, but I didn't want to be wrong again. When she finally sat down, the conversation softened. "Do you know," she said, "every time one came, I thought maybe you were doing okay. I wanted to believe it. I said. I just didn't think you'd believe it until someone else did." She didn't argue, didn't defend the years of silence, just nodded as if surrender was the only honest answer left. My father, Richard, came next. He closed the door behind him with courtroom precision. "You've put the family in an awkward position," he began. "The press might contact us. We need to manage this carefully." I almost laughed. "You mean manage me?" He ignored the jab. "I could make introductions. Pacific Regional Hospital's Board of Trustees. I've known some of them for decades. They'd be valuable allies. We already signed with most of them last month," I said, and watched him flinch. "I only want to help," he insisted, his pride balancing on the word. When I wasn't anyone, I asked, "Did you want to help then?" He looked away as if the wall might provide an answer. "That's not fair," he muttered. "No," I said, "it's just late." Stephen entered after that, his face still pale from the night before. "Ethan," he said, "I owe you an apology. I've made jokes I shouldn't have. I didn't know." "You didn't ask," I said gently. "There's a difference." Lauren stepped in behind him, holding a folder. "I came to say thank you," she said, "and also feedback." She opened the folder and pulled out a report. "At the hospitals I manage Solunet systems run beautifully, but the alert module could learn to adjust for context, like when medication timing changes mid-shift. It's flagging too much noise." I smiled. "That's the best kind of criticism." "You'll fix it?" she asked. "Well, learn from it," I said. The door cracked open again before they left. Olivia's voice carried down the hall light and poisonous. "Smile, everyone. They're going to love this." She was live streaming, phone angled just enough to catch my face. "My brother, the mysterious genius," she said to her followers, tone dripping with disbelief. "Crazy, right?" Before I could move, she was gone, and a notification pinged on my phone seconds later. A journalist had messaged, "If you're really DC, confirm it. I'm publishing either way." I didn't answer. I couldn't. That night would devour itself soon enough. Adding words would only feed it. When I looked back at my mother, Margaret, she was holding the tin box in her lap. She opened it slowly, revealing the stack of cards, yellowed edges pressed together like secrets. She picked one and read aloud, voice trembling. "Keep the light on even when no one sees it. DC." Her eyes lifted to mine. "Why didn't you just sign your name?" I swallowed hard. "Because I wanted you to read the message, not the sender." She closed the lid hands, trembling. "You're still my son," she whispered. "That never changed." I left soon after, walking out through the Astoria Grand's quiet hallways, the chandelier reflections following me like questions. Back at the Fairmont, I sat on the edge of the bed, suit still on phone lighting the room. Aaron's message came through. "If the press calls tomorrow, speak in your own language system's data patients. Don't let them turn this into gossip." My calendar reminder blinked beneath it. 9 a.m. Meeting with CIO Pacific Regional Hospital. The screen dimmed, my reflection fading. 2 doors were waiting, one technical, one personal. I had no idea which would open first. By the time the city slept, the internet was awake. Someone at the engagement had filmed the moment Lauren's whisper the silence, my nod, and uploaded it with a caption, "He said he's DC, the hidden founder of Neurobridge." It took less than 4 hours to spread. By dawn, every tech outlet had a headline waiting. I woke to the sound of vibration after vibration, messages stacking on the lock screen. The COO's voice on the phone was all caffeine and panic. "The leaks are everywhere. Everyone wants confirmation. Do we comment or deny? I thought of Aaron's advice. If the truth gets out, don't hide. Explain the purpose, not the drama." Then my mother, Margaret, called from Savannah. Her voice trembled through the static. "Ethan, what have you done? Every cousin's calling. The papers are saying our family's name. They're talking about a product that saves lives." "Mom," I said, "not a scandal." She didn't answer. The line filled with the sound of her breathing, then the click of disapproval she'd perfected since I was 16. Online, the story split like an artery. Harvard dropout builds $480 million startup. Some praised the determination. Others hunted for flaws. One finance site questioned whether NeuroBridge's AI crossed ethical boundaries with patient data. Words like privacy breach and compliance risk crawled across screens. By noon, an old colleague from Denver posted a long thread claiming he'd quit over integrity issues, painting me as reckless. It was half memory, half invention. But the algorithm didn't care about nuance. Olivia added to the noise with a live video titled, "When Your Brother Hides a Secret." This big pretending to explain, but mostly implying comments filled with fire emojis and disbelief. The COO called another emergency meeting with legal. "If you don't speak, they'll define you," she said. "Right now, you're a mystery, and mystery invites projection." I stared at the headlines and realized she was right. Silence had protected me once. Now it was turning against me. That evening, I asked our media team to set up a single camera shoot in the office. No fancy lighting, no teleprompter. I wanted it honest the way the work had always been. When the red light blinked, I took a breath. "I didn't hide my name to make a reveal," I said. I stayed quiet so the work could prove itself before I did. Technology isn't flawless. It learns, it fails, it improves. Our job is to make it safer, not perfect. I'm proud of what NeuroBridge has built, and I stand by it. The video went live at midnight. Within 24 hours, it hit millions of views. Half the comments thanked me for transparency. The other half dissected every word, accusing me of spin, of calculated humility, of running an empire behind a curtain. Praise and suspicion arrived in equal measure. At dawn, a message arrived from an encrypted address, a CEO from a major Portland medical conglomerate. "We'd like to meet privately. No press. Bring no one." The subject line read simply, "Opportunities." Aaron called minutes later. "Be careful," he warned. "They don't invite founders, they recruit them. If you go, you're walking into a buyout dressed as a conversation." I didn't reply. I just watched the news ticker crawl across the hotel TV NeuroBridge, the new empire of hidden ethics. The phrase made me shiver. I built this to connect systems, to stop mistakes from killing people, not to become another corporate riddle. The phone buzzed again. This time it was my mother, Margaret. "Come home to Savannah," she said. "We need to talk." I stood by the window, the city rising in glass and fog below me, and thought of the one rule I'd written on the whiteboard years ago: do no harm. But maybe harm isn't always what code does. It's also what silence allows. A week after the dinner, I stayed in Portland to stand up our East office, and my parents flew in from Savannah under the flag of a visit that looked a lot like control. We met at the Willamette Club, all brass lamps and quiet carpets, the kind of room where even the ice behaves. For a while, no one spoke. A server poured wine with the care of a surgeon. Then my father Richard set his glass down as if opening a hearing. "Your mother and I think we should align on how to handle the narrative." I kept my voice level. "A narrative is for a campaign. This is my life." My mother Margaret tried to soften it. "He means we need to protect the family's image." I looked at the portraits on the paneled walls. Men who wore success like a uniform, and said, "This family never protected me even when I had nothing worth stealing." The room swallowed the echo. A server placed the morning paper beside the bread. Front page, Harvard dropout. Ethan Cole is the founder of NeuroBridge, valued at $480 million. My father skimmed it, mouth tilting. At least they got half of it right. I didn't move. The other half he didn't blink. "You nearly disgraced us when you left school." I let out a short breath that wasn't quite a laugh. "If failure is a crime, my success doesn't need a pardon." Lauren appeared at the doorway, apologetic but steady, a folder in hand. "I'm sorry to interrupt," she said. "I have the expansion packet for Pacific Regional Hospital, and I need your signature." She slid the documents across. We stood together by a side table while I initialed the margins. My mother Margaret studied us the way clinicians assess vitals, looking for what's real beneath what's said. "Who is she to you?" she asked when I handed the folder back. "Someone who understands the work without needing to know who I am?" I said. My mother went quiet in that way people do when the answer lands on a truth they've avoided. When Lauren left, my mother rested her palm on the stem of her glass and didn't lift her eyes. "We were wrong, Ethan." My father Richard's posture stayed rigid, but he didn't object. She kept going. "We taught you to fear failure instead of learning how to stand up in it. You taught us you don't need a famous name to have worth." I nodded once. "I don't need an apology. I need the truth named." She met my gaze. "The truth is you built something none of us imagined." My father's phone rang. "Press?" he muttered, reaching for the easy shelter of no comment. I put my hand out. "Give it to me." He hesitated, then passed the phone. "This is Ethan Cole," I said, keeping it simple. "I only want to say this. No one fails just because they take a different path." I ended the call. That single line ran on the evening news without edits, a clean sentence cutting through the noise. When we stood to leave, my mother did something she hadn't done in 8 years. She stepped forward and held me. Not a pose for a camera, not a performance for a room, just a mother and a son standing in a club where we didn't used to fit. Later, walking back along the river, I watched the first snow of the season lace the Willamette, the new office windows, throwing a warm grid onto the dark water like a living circuit. I told myself that recognition doesn't come from a market or a judge. Sometimes it's just the weight of an arm around your shoulders after you stop needing permission to belong. 6 months later, the hum had cooled into something workable. Nura Bridge ran clean. Portland was fully staffed, and our teams in Europe and Japan were shipping on schedule. I flew to Savannah for the anniversary gala of the local hospital, the one that had just signed Solunet Corps. It was the first time my whole family would stand in a public room with me since the day I walked out of Harvard. The auditorium lights dimmed. The MC read from a card. Solunet was developed by founder Ethan Cole, born here in Savannah. Applause moved like a tide. In the front row, my mother Margaret pressed a handkerchief to her eyes, while my father Richard stood to clap first, not for show, but with something older than pride. When I stepped to the podium, I didn't tell them the story they'd read online. I said I left this place to help data talk to itself. Today, I'm learning the same is true for people. The room felt less like an audience and more like a network finally wired. Afterward, my father led me into a quiet corridor lined with photos of retired nurses and volunteers. "I used to think you embarrassed us," he said, voice low. "Now I'm proud of how wrong I was." He handed me a slim folder. "If you're willing, we'll fund a scholarship. Not in your name for students who leave school to build or research anyway." I opened it, saw the draft terms, and closed it again. "Don't name it for me," I said. "Name it for people who try." He nodded. And in that nod, I saw a man loosening a grip he'd held all his life. That evening in the backyard where I learned to catch fireflies, my mother set a small tin box between us on the table, the same one from the china cabinet. "The first time one of these arrived," she said, "opening it, I thought someone admirable was encouraging me to be patient." "It was you." I met her eyes. "I didn't send them to make you proud. I just didn't want you to think I'd vanished." She reached for me across the table and cried in a way that didn't ask to be fixed. This time I didn't move to end it. I let the years empty out where they needed to. At dawn, I walked to the river. The water picked up the morning like a new idea, gold to white, then clean blue. That means the day belongs to the living. My phone buzzed with a photo from Lauren taken beside a window in Tokyo where the sun was already high. A single caption Solunet rising in Asia. I smiled and said to the quiet, "And in the Coleman house, too." On the flight back, I wrote my last lines for the talk I would give at a medical conference in Seattle, then closed the laptop and watched the clouds. I used to think justice meant making people regret. What I wanted and what I finally got was simpler. I wanted them to listen. Now they do, and I can be quiet without being misunderstood.